Hey guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another modern RPG. And this time I'm going to be having a look at Dragonbane from Free League Publishing, or at least the quick starter of it. Because this one had kind of skipped me by. Although the advertising for this is absolutely everywhere, it's the first video I see when I'm watching anything on YouTube at the moment, and it's absolutely dominating my Facebook. There's just so many adverts for this everywhere. But it was another fantasy game. Even though it's by Free League Publishing, you know, the guys who brought us Twilight 2000, a game I'm very proud to have on my shelf up there. A fantastic reboot of Twilight 2000, which is one of my favourite games of all time. But this was just another fantasy game. I wasn't excited by it. If I want to play fantasy, I've got Dungeons & Dragons, I've got Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, various editions of that. I've got Tunnels and Trolls, I've got Harp. Just so many fantasy games which I would love to play before anything else. So I'd kind of ignored the adverts, I'd ignored the Kickstarter. But one of the viewers on one of my videos made a comment that there was these quick start rules for it. Now, as you know, if you watch the channel, I'm an absolute sucker for looking through rule sets. So here we are, I've downloaded it. And being very upfront about this is very nice. The look of it's good. There's lots of nice ideas in here. It's very derivative of Dungeons and Dragons, but it's got its own interesting ideas in there, and I love the little adventure they've thrown in here to get you into dungeon delving and into the game. Some interesting stuff. Now, the artwork style, it's these sort of flattened colours, almost faded and aged, in an animated style. It looks like it's come out of some kind of animated film. And I like what they've done. If we flick over the page, we can see this very flat coloured, very aged effects, but absolutely lovely evocative artwork. Very nice stuff. There's not a massive amount of art through it, but what there is really, really good. We go in. It was in the olden times, before the world was covered in forest, and iron was tamed by dwarven masters, before the advent of humanity and mastery of the bread and ale-making arts. The world was then ruled by dragons and demons. Yes, draconic spirit serpents and demonic creatures were the princes and princesses of the olden times. They were the primordial forces through which the world and its primeval matter was formed. So we've got some history here of how the world was created. This would be an interesting setting even if it was just for Dungeons & Dragons, but with its own rule set, it is a much more interesting thing. We've got the introductory sections here, so how you play it, what a Games Master is, how to start playing, etc. And then we're straight into player characters. Now, in Dungeons & Dragons, you've got your races and your classes. Well, in Dragonbane here, we've got kin and professions. So there are 6 playable kin in the Dragonbane. Human, halfling, dwarf, elf, which are pretty standard, and mallard and wolfkin. Now, these are really quite interesting. They're reminiscent of other stuff to me, but this is one flaw of this quick start. I'd like to paragraph kind of explaining what they are, because the pre-generated characters for the adventure give me an idea what they like, but that might just be those particular characters. Anyway, we've got the profession, which aren't really detailed in here. Attributes, so we've got 6 attributes from 3 to 18, or higher in some cases. Strength, constitution, agility, intelligence, willpower, and charisma. So basically we've got the Dungeons & Dragons stats, but with willpower replacing wisdom, which is a suggestion I made in my house rules video on attributes. We've got the full variety of polyhedral dice it uses. We've got derived ratings of movement, damage bonus, hit points, willpower points. It explains how skills work. We've got motivation, gear, encumbrance, just the standard rules, how to roll the dice. Now I'll do a rules breakdown on this, which will be out on Friday. So we'll go into detail on how these rules work. As I said, the artwork is very flat colours, very muted, but very evocative. Such angular art. Very nice stuff. pushing your roll. So if you fail, you can continue to push, like in other Free League games, like Twilight 2000, like the Alien RPG, like the Terminator RPG. You can push beyond it. I believe Dragonbane is based on an older Swedish game, so this might be where that rule originally came from. I like the way it's handled in here better, though. Basically, when you push something, you then have to choose and describe how it takes effect. So we've got things like, you take penalty on all charisma rolls because you're dirty. So you will write that in. You know, you're trying to attack somebody and you miss, you stumble in the dirt, but then you swing up and you hit them. So your clothes are dirty, so people will give you a charisma penalty, but you got a second roll at that attack. There's dazed for strength, sickly for constitution, exhausted for agility, angry for intelligence, and scared for willpower. Now, angry I'd probably always write in as I'm very frustrated, I'm getting angry at failing something, but you can see how willpower could come in. You're scared of appearing a failure in front of your friends. Exhausted, you just pushed yourself too hard. Dazed, you've pushed so hard that you've made yourself dizzy. Sickly, you've just pushed and pushed and you're absolutely exhausted and out of energy completely. These are very interesting, and you can write them in as a player, deciding how you're going to push your rolls. Got the combat and damage section, rounds and initiative, action and movement. It's very Dungeons and Dragons like, where everybody just goes in sequence and everybody gets basically one action. Although there's parrying and dodging in this, which is an interesting addition, and I'm not sure I like how it's handled. But again, watch on Friday for how that works. We've got ranged combat, which is similar to melee combat, but slightly different, and I like the fact that these aren't exactly the same. They have their advantages and disadvantages. Damage, one of the points is armor. Unlike Dungeons and Dragons, where it makes you harder to hit, in Dragonbane, it takes damage away, so it's damage resistance. We've got the different types of conditions, healing, other hazards. Then we're on to this monsters section. One of the things I find interesting is monster attacks. A monster always uses a monster attack when it attacks. Each monster has a unique set of monster attacks. Monsters never roll dice to hit their attack. Monster attacks succeed automatically. So while characters can still try and parry and dodge certain attacks, the monsters always hit. Which makes this game a bit more dangerous, I think. Go through them. We've got the magic section and how that works. There's a big point on willpower points. Basically, equal to your willpower attribute, you have a number of willpower points. Now, as a wizard, you are spending willpower to cast magic, but each class has its own abilities. So we've got various spells here, and then we're on to the adventure, which is basically the characters have heard about a crown being lost in an ancient tomb, and they're delving down for riches. It's not an exciting idea, but it's a very basic dungeon delve, a great way of getting into in a game. I'm very impressed with it. There's a lot of interesting stuff in there. I won't spoil it. And then we've got the characters. So we've got Archmaster Adohan. A nice picture. We see that he's got his abilities here. Adaptive, willpower points cost 3. He's a magi. Willpower points varies. Orla Moonsilver, a elf here. She's got inner peace and animal kinship. Makanda of Half Bay, who's a Mallard Knight. Now I get a feeling that the Mallards, without having too much background on them, there's not much said about them at all, but from that image, from this character, the idea of noble ducks going into combat and being overly proud and overly likely to be offended because it's just a duck and people don't treat them seriously, but they are an honourable warrior people. I kind of like that. It's kind of fun. Reminds me a lot of the character Frobisher from Doctor Who. I believe it's audios and the comics, where the Doctor went around with a shapeshifter who usually stuck in the form of a 4-foot tall talking penguin. ridiculous, but it was very, very funny because he was a sort of hard-boiled detective type, but he looks like a big penguin. I'm drawing that myself into these, but there's not a lot to tell. Carrying on through them, Chrisana the Bold, who's a halfling, looks very traditional, and Baston Bloodjaw, who's a wolfen. They get hunting instincts with their willpower points and seasoned fighter. These look like the barbarians from the Waste, half wolf, half human. They're very savage, but for all I know, they could be far more interesting, like ideas with the Wookiees in Star Wars, where they are a savage, powerful jungle creature, but they don't tend to use that because they've got honor. They don't like to use their claws in fighting. They don't want to be known as going berserk and raging, because that would be to lose control, and that's not part of their culture at all. These could be like that, and there's just not enough to tell. I would love to know a bit more. And that's us at the back of the book. So that's just a very brief look through Dragonbane, the quick start of it. And as I said, I'll be doing a rules breakdown. I'll be going through the rules in a bit more detail. But I like it. I would definitely be interested in seeing more about this. I'm not going to back the quick starter, especially not as with the Twilight 2001 I missed, and I just bought it, and I ended up getting my book before people who had backed the Kickstarter. So I don't have much faith in them getting stuff out to me quickly, but I might just buy the book once it comes available. I do like the look of it a lot. Anyway, I think I've whittled on for quite long enough, so thank you very much for watching. But as always, most of all, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.